Today, I want to start with a story about several children who never felt that their reflection in the mirror was the one they were supposed to be seeing. They never felt that the person others saw was the person they were. Others made assumptions about them and wanted to put them in a category, a box that others could understand. You look like a girl, so you must be one, and so you have to wear a dress and act like one by wearing girl colors. So I know who you are and I can identify you. You're a boy, so you can't dress up and play with dolls. You have to play with these trucks so I can feel comfortable. These stories are true and more common than you think. As children are figuring out who they are, why do we adults need to know? Is it for our comfort? It certainly isn't for the children's comfort. They'd rather explore because knowing who you are is innate and natural, while being told who you are isn't. Being accepted for exactly who you are is something many of us take for granted. We don't think about it because we innately fit into those societal categories and accept them. But what if we had to fit into categories every day that didn't reflect who we really are because we were being put into others' boxes without our consent? What might that feel like? How would that impact our learning, our growth, our self-esteem? Welcome to Small and Gutsy, a podcast featuring interviews with nonprofit and social impact organizations under $10 million. My name is Laura Witkoff, and I'm excited and proud to be your host. My hope is that you will love the stories as much as we do, and perhaps you will find needed services, a job, volunteer, or donate. Feel free to pass along any valuable information you hear today to others, and remember to send me the name of any organization you'd like featured at reachus@theintrinsicgroup.com. Summer camp is a place to play, learn, and grow. And for one very cool camp, it's a place for kids to be kids without being put into categories or boxes. Harbor Camps is a nonprofit organization that provides camps for youth and families of specific populations that may often feel marginalized. Campers build confidence, resilience, community, and where they can be truly their authentic selves. Camp Aeronautic, the first harbor camp, was established in 2009 and had its first week-long program in 2010 at a rented site with 40 campers. It has now grown to serve over 650 campers each summer at its very own home in New Hampshire. Harbor Camps has since expanded to include 2 additional camps, Camp Seneb, a 1-week camp for kids with skeletal dysplasia, and Camp Reflections, a 1-week camp for kids with facial differences. My focus today is on the first of the Harbor Camps, Camp Aeronautic, a camp specifically for questioning and trans youth. I am so very honored to introduce Nick Teisch, founder and director of Harbor Camps. So let's get started. Welcome, Nick. Please share with us your passion about camp, your deep connection and commitment, and what led to your involvement and creation of Harbor Camps.
Thank you, Laura. It's really great to be with you. We've known each other a while, and I'm just excited to always talk about camp. Camp was a really formative experience in my life. I went to camp since I was 10 years old. And the camp that I went to was an 8-week camp. So we were there all 8 weeks, all summer, every summer. And it was really a place that I grew up at and absolutely loved. I myself am transgender. I was assigned female at birth, and really in the 80s, 90s didn't know what it was to be transgender. That word wasn't used. Certainly if it was something I saw or heard about, it was typically somebody who was assigned male at birth and maybe transitioned to female, although even that was rare and certainly not looked upon as something to be desired. So I went to a girls' camp. Even though it was a girls' camp, I was sort of the kid there with the really short hair and, into sports and sort of those stereotypical, more what you would call tomboy things. And as I got older, sort of never outgrew that in a way that finally made me realize who I was, I guess, but not until after college. So my parents went to camp as kids. Even my grandfather went to camp. My brother went to camp. So it's always been something in my family. And they were the best summers of my life. And I stayed at that camp. I was a counselor. I eventually became a member of the leadership team. And then I had to go back to life in the real world where I was working year round in politics. And at that time, I started to volunteer at a separate camp. And that camp, when they found out I would be transitioning, at first I was met with acceptance, and then sort of to me out of nowhere, they got me on the phone and they said, "You can't come back for the good of the kids. It's really not going to work," and it left me feeling very surprised given the people that ran that camp and what I knew about them. And I think they didn't know what to do and they didn't know how to handle it, and they handled it poorly. And the lemonade that came from that, so to speak, was Harbor Camps and Camp Aeronautic. I think it was not 4 months after that we incorporated, and I got some people who are still very involved in camp in 2009, and we just went with it. And I learned a lot about nonprofit management by way of starting a nonprofit, which is one way to do it. Not necessarily the best way, but it's been a journey and it's been wonderful. I just feel like I have my dream job to get these kids out at camp and just being themselves. At Camp Aeronautic, which is our longest standing and biggest camp, getting trans and non-binary kids to be able to experience what it's like to be a kid without having to think about their gender or think about being different. As I tell the kids that are applying to camp when I talk to them also on Zoom, I say to them, you really start with an understanding of other kids at camp from day one, because you're at this level of I'm trans, I'm gender non-binary, I understand that part of it, and that the bonds that can grow and the friendships that can grow from that are just that much more special and happen that much more quickly.
Your early story is both heart-wrenching and heart-warming at the same time. And I love that you say the lemonade that came out, because it's really true. It was your positive move forward to say, if it doesn't exist, I'm going to create it. And you did. When you take defending your identity and who you are out of the equation, kids are kids. And they want to do the same things that all kids want to do. And you've really made that possible. There's a baseline of understanding that doesn't require them to wear a suit of armor on a regular basis, which I think most kids who are in that situation feel forced to do more often than not. I wonder if your early experience of your own being at summer camp opened up so many new arenas of growth and resilience building and skill building and the love of what camp does, that you wanted to bring that into this space.
Yeah, exactly. I think summer camp it's a luxury in terms of people that can do it. And certainly it's not available to enough kids, although I think that's changing. But it's such a wonderful thing for kids to experience, because at the age of 8, at the youngest, typically, or 7, they're off on their own and they're being independent. They have to learn how to navigate interpersonal conflict and being disappointed and triumphs and feeling great about themselves and gaining that confidence. Everything from getting dressed in the morning in whatever they want to wear to navigating friendships and obstacles that are going to come up over the course of the summer. It's easy when parents are there and they say, "Oh, I'm going to step in because these kids are having a conflict." Certainly our camp counselors are wonderful at that, but it really helps to be able to have kids learning those skills. So if they do go away to college, that's not the first time they're learning those skills or they're being away. And it just teaches them so many wonderful skills. And they're having a wonderful time. It's like a sleepover every night for however long you're there. And our kids for Aeronautic, we started with 1 week, which was what we were renting camps. And now we have 1, 2, and 3 week sessions. And then we also have family camps for long weekends as well. And so they really get a chance to get to know each other and get to know themselves. And like you said, when you take that out of the equation, the gender stuff, it's like they're just really able to be whoever else they are. And most of the time they're talking about their gender and they're defending it and they're answering questions. And really what they want to be known as is this great artist or this kid who really wants to learn basketball
Yeah.
or an avid reader of whatever series. That's who they are. And those are the types of kids they get to be at Aeronautic.
Like every typical kid, I think, wants that same thing. I had the great privilege of meeting a few of the campers. And one of the quotes that stayed with me for many, many years is, "It was the first time I could feel like me." And as a parent, that is such a core sense of what you want your child to feel like all the time. And so you're giving these kids an incredible gift. You're absolutely right. Camp is a privilege. And I'd love for you to talk about, for those kids who can't afford it, I believe you have scholarship opportunities. So will you speak to that for a moment? And then we'll get into the activities of camp and how it runs.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we started, my number one priority was making sure that this was not going to just be a camp for wealthy kids. It can't be, because this is a camp for trans and non-binary kids. Which non-binary, interestingly, was not really a phrase that we were using even back in 2009, which, as I like to say, is 200 years ago in trans years. It's really important that everyone has this opportunity. So we raise a lot of financial aid and scholarship money. We give it out as much as is needed to as many kids as is needed. And then if we have to catch up with raising the money after the summer, we do that. So we've got these wonderful donors, mostly individuals. In some cases, people just need a break of a little bit. And in some cases, they need not only scholarship, but airfare. Fundraising is the only way that we can do that. So that is thanks to everyone who's helped us, and getting the kids there on a level playing field. Everybody's living in the same cabin, using the same bathrooms. Not to say that class doesn't come up, because I think that's a little naive to think that, but everybody's a camper, and that's what's important. And focusing on what you want to bond over, which is your sameness, and what you want to celebrate also, which is your difference too.
Yeah, beautifully said. So you become known for, you're a good artist, or you're a good basketball player, or you're a good swimmer, or you're building skills here, which is wonderful. Share with me the choice of names, both Camp Aeronautic and Harbor Camps. Where do those come from? What's the meaning behind them?
So Camp Aeronautic is a name that comes from the Yupik people in Alaska, so Native Alaskan tribe, and it means someone who transcends gender, and was actually thought to have magical powers, to sort of be in between genders. And so at the time that I was thinking of names, that really spoke to me. Something that celebrates the gender variance, or the sort of, non-conforming to society of gender, in a way that the contemporary Western culture does not celebrate. It was really important that the kids sort of think positively about it.
And do most of the kids know what the meaning behind that name as part of your camp introduction? Because I think that's really incredible.
Yes, we do, and we have a couple songs about it as well, so kids understand, really transcending the typical binary of gender.
Fabulous. Great.
Yeah, and Harbor Camps, we were looking for just sort of a little bit more generic word for a safe place, a place that you look to in a storm, where you feel like you're safe. And that's a harbor, safe harbor. That's really where that came from. And our other two camps, Camp Seneb for kids with skeletal dysplasia, or dwarfism as it's more commonly referred to. Seneb was an ancient Egyptian king who had achondroplasia, a form of dwarfism, and was a king. Reflections is our camp for kids with facial differences, and that is just a matter of looking at yourself and loving yourself and feeling, this is me.
That's great.
So each of them have their own individual identities and names, but all of them have the same premise, which is come to camp, be with others like you, and start on that level, and be a kid without having to deal with all of the, why are you the way you are? Why do you look like that? Why do you act like that? Why did you choose this? Or why do you have that scar, or whatever it is? Just taking that out and being a kid.
I wish we could clone harbor camps all over the world. I'm sure you felt the same way, because it really, when you look at a kid's thirst and hunger, both with natural curiosity and natural self-esteem that you want to support and grow and nurture, camp is a way you can do that in a healthy environment. That, I think what you said earlier is so true. It prepares someone, whether they go to college or not, but prepares someone in the future, because when they're in a conflict, it's not about that one aspect of their identity. It's about whose turn is it to play basketball, or whatever the issue is at camp.
Yeah, it's funny because we often will tell people, before they come, kids and staff as well, this is not a utopia. It's a wonderful place, but you're going to have disagreements. Everyone's not going to be your best friend. And it is refreshing. I think, a little anecdote was the very first year, I think it was the first hour that camp started. And we were just like, this is happening. What's going on? And this young girl, I guess, had been sitting in a chair and somebody else took her chair when she got up. And she said something to the effect of, my brother does this to me when I'm home, and I didn't think that this kind of thing would happen here. And so we obviously just kind of a funny, but yeah, I mean, kids are kids, and I think they're a lot more supportive of each other than they would be maybe at other camps. But that's the thing. We've always had a lot of media asking us, can we come to camp? Can we film this? Can we do a documentary? And I've said, look, you're going to be bored because you're going to come to camp and you're going to see a summer camp and you're going to see kids canoeing and doing archery and eating their lunch and walking with flashlights. I don't really know what you want. This is what it is.
I'm wondering if you could walk us through, a day at camp. Even though it may be pretty typical, your curriculum and way you do things may be really interesting for folks to learn about.
Sure. So everyone is living in cabins. So we've got about 8 campers and 2 counselors in a cabin. And so everybody gets up, gets ready for the day, goes to breakfast. We have a little bit of a cleanup and gathering, getting ready for the day after breakfast. And then we have 2 activity periods. So our activities are, we have several different sports, things like rock climbing and archery, gaga ball, and then some, regular team sports, swimming, canoeing, kayaking, stand-up paddleboarding, drama, music, low elements course, and tubing, and arts and crafts. I should not leave that out. That is one of our most popular. And then we go to lunch. We have a rest hour after lunch, just chill out. 2 more activity periods. We have a snack and a free period that gets them if they want to go back in the lake or back to arts and crafts, or just sit on the field with a guitar, or, walk and talk with their friends, read a book. And then we do dinner, and then we have an evening activity, which is typically an all camp activity, or, most of the camp together. We might do a campfire, which is a nice thing, and s'mores after that. Or we might do, a capture the flag game, or a scavenger hunt, or a movie night. And then we come back at the very end of the evening, we come back together and we sing our camp song, the Harbor Song. That is a really nice tradition that we sort of end as evening is falling, singing our song and heading back to our cabins, get ready for bed. And I think, certainly from my days at camp, and I don't think this has changed, some of the best parts of camp are when you're in the cabin at night and you're just talking to your friends. And you're talking, the lights are turned out finally by the counselors who are getting annoyed that you're still, trying to keep them on. And then you've got your flashlights and you're whispering and you're talking. And, I think that's fun. I mean, you're just hanging out with friends.
And I had a question about the cabins that you probably get on application. Kids are either I've identified as trans or maybe questioning a little bit non-binary. And do they select themselves whether they want to be in a particular cabin? How does that work?
Yeah. So what they do is they let us know if they want to be with kids who are of similar gender identity to them, or in a bunk of a mix of different genders. And although the majority choose similar gender, there are some mixed gender bunks. And a lot of them, now that we have so many kids who are non-binary and trans, are a mix anyway of those. So it might be sort of a spectrum of gender, but they're all around the same age, which is sort of the most important thing.
I absolutely think that's brilliant, because the developmental piece is really around the same age, not one's identity. That comes at various points, but the developmental piece from a cognitive growth aspect and emotional growth aspect is really age related. So I am in awe that you've not only figured that out, but applying it in real time with kids who need to have that support. So I have one question, probably a hard question. What is it like? How many tears are shed at the end of either that 1 week, that 3 week? How are the tears and the goodbyes and the, I can't wait till next year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's some of that at every camp, and at our camp, it's even more. Sometimes it can be a little more dramatic because they're really going off into different worlds, and some kids are in wonderfully supportive households and communities and schools. And more often than not, the kids are going back to at least one of those that's not, super great. We really encourage them to keep in touch with them and call them when they're feeling like they need that support. When we had to make the decision not to open in 2020 it was horrible. I mean, it was horrible for them. It was horrible for me. It was sort of unthinkable. I think that connection of at least we get to see you every year is so important.
So how did you manage through COVID-19 with the campers and stay connected? And, what did you do during this last summer?
I think it was the end of March, we started having some online hangouts where we asked some of our staff who are just really great and creative to come up with some games. It gained traction. We pivoted to 8 weeks of programming where we had what we called e-bunks. So the same group of your bunk would meet twice a week and just to kind of hang out and talk with some counselors and campers. And then we had a couple of evening activity specials. Like we had one of our old chefs from camp do cooking. We had an author talk about a book. We had Nicole Maines come in and talk. We had a whole bunch of fun kind of, scavenger hunt, stuff like that going on. So we had a couple hundred kids or more involved in that. Some of them were not interested because they just felt like they were burnt out of virtual, and that's totally understandable. But we kept the connection with everyone as best we could. And now we do once a month, we do a virtual hangout online for our campers. We can't get back to it soon enough. The attitude is we'll do anything. We don't care if we have to do things differently because we know we do.
For this coming summer.
Yeah, we have a pretty robust plan that has come from a lot of help from directors who did run camps in 2020 in a way that was really healthy, safe, and successful. Some things are going to be different, but camp itself is not going to be different. It is the friendships, it is spending time together, and it's being able to be yourself. COVID's not going to change that. Even if you have to social distance in certain situations or, eat outside, stay in a cohort of certain number of kids and travel in that cohort.
I love your attitude and I love your determination. I think that's what created harbor camps in the first place. And so the nothing is going to stop you attitude also that translates to the resilience of the kids who attend. So I do know, and I'd love for you to speak a tiny bit about this before we get into our quick round of Gutsy questions, which is how I end all my podcasts. I know that you're doing a campaign for logs. So talk a little bit about how maybe a donor can buy a log, and what is that exactly?
We have these logs at camp that have plaques on them. So donors that give $1,000 or more as a gift can get a plaque that will live in perpetuity at camp. We also are constantly, you asked about expansion. That's something that we have always been working on. And this summer in 2021 was pre-planned expansion before COVID. And we're going forward with it, which is that we used to have our 1, 2, and 3 week sessions overlapping in terms of people would come for the first 2, the last 1, or all 3. And now they're 3 distinct sessions. So we're actually increasing camp by 50%. That gives us between 100 and 150 more kids we can serve. and a staff that really stays the whole summer, which is not something we've done before. So that's exciting for Aeronautic. And so with that, we also, our health center needs an expansion. Our office of operations is a building that's been on this property since, I believe, the 1930s and is in pretty rough shape. So, and building 2 additional camper cabins. So that's sort of our latest project building things, and I do appreciate you bringing that up. And the interesting thing, Laura, is that a lot of people who send their kids to our camps, they're not necessarily camp people. They're people with trans or non-binary kids, or kids with dwarfism, or kids with a facial difference, who are looking for resources, and they hear about camp and they're like, I was never going to send my kid to overnight camp necessarily, but now I am because I love the idea of this. Versus most overnight camps who are pulling from typical people who they would send their kid to overnight camp in any case. So we have a few more parents who look at me like I have 3 heads when I say I went to camp for 8 weeks as a kid, thinking, how could your parents have let you go for that long? Sort of thinking it was more of a punishment when actually they were giving me the best thing that I could have been given, because they knew that because they went. We have more parents who are a little bit more trepidatious about their kids being away for longer. And so having those shorter sessions really helps. We also have kids who go 3 weeks who say, okay, we're waiting. When are we going to go for more than 3 weeks? So it's a matter of, figuring that out and sort of doing that dance. But we do feel like we have that 3 weeks is about the length of typical half session at a summer long camp. So, we feel good about having that for now.
I think it's great. And the other 2 camps for the other specialized populations are at different times of the summer, so that each camp is individually a camp within itself.
Yes, exactly. So that's their camp. That's the only thing going on at that time. Yeah. And so, we making room for those camps. And that really just came from me wanting to expand beyond just trans youth, dealing with populations that didn't otherwise have camps in the Northeast. There are many wonderful special population camps, some that have existed for many, many years, and many who deal with kids who have medical issues that really need high-tech attention, so to speak. So we were looking for the underserved communities in the Northeast who also had any medical issues might be able to be dealt with at a very typical rustic camp with a rustic health center and a couple of nurses. Stand-Up started in 2016 and Reflections in 2019. And that has just been so much fun for me. I can't even explain, just getting to know kids from a different community than I'm a part of. I'm a part of the trans community, obviously. I'm learning from them, not because I'm asking them questions, but because I'm just with them. And it's fun.
You get to see them as people.
Right. And they're, trying to get more staff that are in the community for role models to look up to. One of the best things I think about Aeronautic, just because it's been around longer, but the other camps as well, is kids who are able to see their camp counselors as adults who are in the community, who are happy, maybe not all the time, but they're successful in whatever that means to them. They might be in school, they might have a job, they might have a partner. They're just showing the kids by way of just being themselves that you're going to be okay. And that is huge. That can't be overstated. Sometimes these kids think, what is it going to be like when I grow up? Am I going to be a functioning member of society? And we hope they can look to the counselors and say, you're doing it, I can do it. And now we have counselors in training, CITs, who are 16, 17, 18, who are sort of that middle generation. So we've got this sort of 3 generations going on, which is really fun to see. We have people coming back as staff who are campers with us, which I really love. I think it's fantastic.
Well, it shows that full circle in a lot of ways. I want to comment on a few things. One is, when you're a kid, you want to have good, positive adult role models in your life. And you've just shared exactly what kids need, whether one is in a specialized population or not. It's what we need. So you're supplying that in this most beautiful way. And the other thing I wanted to just reflect upon is parents who don't typically send their kids to camp, who have a kid in a specialized population. I sometimes wonder if it's fear-based, because when your kid is already needing to put an armor on and you see it in their daily life in school or in the neighborhood or wherever, even your experience as an adult being a counselor and being told you couldn't come back, parents want to naturally protect their children. So the fact that you've created this is going to expand a parent's understanding of Harbor, of what safety is for their kids, and that their kids are going to learn to navigate when they go back home in other environments. And that is an incredible gift that you've given these populations. I can't say it enough. And I also really want to highlight that there are camps that have been around for a long time that deal with, illness and medical conditions and grief and all kinds of things. And so I really appreciate that you targeted around criteria that you felt wasn't being met. Now on to our round of quick, gutsy questions. What is at the top of your wish list, but the answer can't be money, funding, donations?
That's a good question. One of the things we talk about, people who can be those wonderful role models and maybe want to apply to be staff. And I should mention that it has been a long time that we've had volunteers at camp, and they've been amazing, and they've been understanding that we were still growing. And 2021 is going to be the first summer that we have no volunteers, completely paid staff. So wow. That's a testament to the ones who have been with us just out of the goodness of their hearts. If there is someone out there who is in our community who feels like, I might want to give this a shot, and feels like they've worked with kids and they can be that role model, I would say that's always at the top of our wish list.
So if you're interested in any of these camps and want to be a volunteer, reach out to Harbor Camps. That's great. If you were to think of a song that describes Harbor Camps, what would it be?
I do think the Harbor song, it's amazing. It's written by Julie Lipson, and Julie has been with us since day one in 2009. They have a band called Ants on a Log, which is children's music, and they're just really wonderful. Very cool progressive music, so Ants on a Log. Anyway, this harbor is safe, this harbor is warm, this harbor is where I can weather a storm. This harbor begins and ends with you and me, and there's no place I'd rather be. And I think that really captures it.
I think it captures it, and now I have goosebumps. What makes your organization gutsy? What makes Harbor Camps gutsy? Because it absolutely is.
I think that certainly when we were forming, it was a gutsy move. I had people who sort of laughed at me and were like, yeah, you're going to start a camp. I was about 26 at the time, and I think that it is the determination, and we will make this happen, and we'll work really hard at it until it does happen. And not everything's going to be smooth. There's been a ton of bumps over these last 12 years, and we're still learning, and we're very much open about talking about that. And I think that starting with a population that was certainly even more controversial than it is today, but is still controversial, being worried about putting out our location. We still do not tell people where our camp is. Most camps have the luxury of saying, here's directions to our camp right on our website. And that was something that we had to think about and say, this is really sad, but we can't give the location unless you are an enrolled camper or staff member. And being worried about how is the local community, who is inevitably going to find out who we are, going to be, and by the way, they've been wonderful. That was scary for me. I worked with people who have, certainly had their share of threats and things like that, but we've been lucky. It's never been an issue for us, knock wood, so far. We were wading into something that not everybody was okay with, and now is much more prevalent.
There's no mountain you all can't climb. That's what it feels like to me, that you're determined and passionate, and that's really what makes you gutsy. And you did do a gutsy thing in 2009, and I commend you for that. It's remarkable. And all the lives you've touched as a result brings me to tears, quite honestly. It's really beautiful. What is something that outsiders or even insiders don't know about harbor camps?
I think there's probably a lot of things that even insiders don't know that sort of goes into the secret sauce of things. And people always ask me, "This is your whole job? What do you do? What do you do the rest of the year?" All camp directors get that question, but
Mm-hmm.
I like to connect to each and every camper. Certainly, when they're coming to camp for the first time, talking to them, getting to know them, maybe even getting to know their family, setting everything up sort of from thinking about, I mean, one example is sort of with COVID, we've been thinking, I mean, we have documents that are going down to like, what kind of ketchup bottles, and are they shared or are they going to be packets, things that we really have to think about, certainly in this day and age, but always have had to, that I think a lot of people think summer camp just happens in June, and it's a business, it's an organization, there's a lot that goes into it. That's always something that I don't need people to know about. They can think it's a pop-up thing that happens, and
But it's
that's
just magic,
it's
right? It
magic.
just
Let them
appears.
think that. That's wonderful.
If you could get one celebrity or influencer to endorse or talk about harbor camps, who might it be?
That's a good question. Part of me wants to think of somebody in the community. We've had some great people in the community that have talked about us, like Jamie Clayton and Nicole Maines and Chaz Bono. And I think if I'm thinking of someone who has been just a wonderful influence, and I'm not up into pop culture the way the kids are. And I know I sound old, and I kind of am. I don't know everything about this person or anything like that. And I am not sure this is, the right answer. But when I think about the early days of our camp, I think about the anthem, the Born This Way. And I think about Lady Gaga, and I think about, she's sort of just said, yeah, that might have been a norm, or that might have been what you're supposed to do, but I don't care. I'm doing it differently. And I've seen the kids really, really relate to that and really kind of love that. And that was such a huge thing in the earlier days. And, I think really, really important. I also think that someone a little bit in more recent, not to be super political, but I think that Stacey Abrams has just been such a wonderful, amazing. I mean, what she has done, and just, I know she's, it's not just her, but to change things and to get people out and to get their voices heard, especially people who had been told that their voice didn't matter because of their race or because of their class or whatever, and just said, we're going to knock on everyone's door and get everyone out there. I mean, that is an incredible amount of work. And I love what's behind that is you matter. And people may try to, knock you down, and you matter. And so I think that's a wonderful example for the kids. There's probably many, many more people I could think of. But
Yeah, those are great. Well, we'll do a shout out to Lady Gaga and to Stacey Abrams. Who knows? You never know who's listening. And we'll
yeah.
hashtag them and do a plug for harbor camps. So, how do folks learn about you? How can they reach you?
Harborcamps.org, so HARBORCAMPS.org, and that has all of our camps on it. And then camperuneutic.org, it can be linked, it is linked from harborcamps.org, but that's just our trans and non-binary camp that has a separate website. I love just getting messages. Sometimes people just send a message through our website saying, this is cool, or, but we're also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all the social media. Yeah.
I want to thank Harbor Camps and my guest, Nick Teich, the founder of Harbor Camps, starting with Camp Aeronautic, what we focused on today, for an incredible story, the impact you, Nick, and Harbor Camps has had on so many. This has been an incredible conversation, and I really appreciate your time sharing with us.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here and getting to talk about it. Just thank you for the opportunity.
I just loved it. And we hope we raise your visibility and spread the word. Our blog of these small and gutsy nonprofits and social impact organizations can be found in the organizational stories section of the Intrinsic Group website, so that we can continue to link clients, volunteers, future employees, and donors to this small but mighty network. Of course, we can't take responsibility outside of our own vetting of the organizations we interview. So before you sign on to support or work for them, we encourage you to do your own due diligence and research them as well. We just want you to learn about the small and gutsy nonprofit and social impact organizational sector so they can spread their story and their very impactful work. I want to thank my partners in this endeavor, the Intrinsic Group, a management consulting firm specializing in guiding organizations to leverage talent and optimize processes, and now focused on celebrating small and gutsy. The volunteers, my co-producer, sound engineer, and composer, Pavel Franson, and my graphic designer, Nate Addy. Please check out their bios on the Intrinsic Group website, and all the folks, friends, and family who have guided and inspired me. And thank you for listening. If you like this podcast, please share it with your friends, give us some stars, and write a review on wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're interested in sponsoring Small and Gutsy to keep it going, please reach out to me at reachus@theintrinsicgroup.com. Thank you for listening, and I'm Laura. Bye for now. Hey, Pavel and I just realized that this is our 10th episode. So we've decided that from now on, we are so happy to have produced 10, and we've got another 12 in the pipeline, and we keep going because Small and Gutsy is small and gutsy. We want to read some of your reviews and your comments. And so we're putting it out there now. If you give us some stars and write a review, we're going to give you a shout out as a thank you, as well as if you name an organization, we're going to shout out to that organization as well. So here's our first one in honor of our 10th episode. It's from Maddie Miller, inspiring and important. I love listening to the Small and Gutsy podcasts. The episodes are both enlightening and fun. Learn about nonprofits that are both local and out of state is a great way to help us stay informed about all the wonderful resources that are available. Thanks, Maddie. We really appreciate it, and thank you for listening.